Welcome back to House of Ajay, Oshun Ajay Exclusive, No Narc Network TV, and Bigo Live. I am the Oracle, Oshun Ajay, aka the Unraveler. So today we're going to be discussing the work of Dr. Peter Gayayev and the power of linguistic wave genetics, which would be using the spoken word to heal on a cellular level by programming and reprogramming the DNA. Healers come in all forms, and I happen to be one of the healers who actually uses the spoken word to heal. And so I wanted to make this video to demonstrate to those who don't believe in the power of the word, to prove to you that the word is the power, because in the beginning the word was with God, and the word was God, and the word is God. And in the word is where the power lies. Check it out.
One of the greatest molecular biologists of our age, pioneer scientist and discoverer of the wave genome, Dr. Peter Gayayev, died on November 17th, 2020, aged 79. No mention of his passing can be found in Russian news outlets, and consequently nothing of the news has yet reached the interested public in the West.
So, one of the greatest molecular biologists of our time has passed. He passed in November of 2020, and still there has been no public mention. Sort of like his death has been kind of swept under the rug.
Dr. Gayayev's life and achievements are too profound and significant to quietly go back to normal. His discoveries have the potential to change our whole perception of life and existence for the better. I therefore feel impelled to encourage everybody with an interest in the future of science and of life on this planet to study his work, study his work, study his work. I have followed Peter Gayayev since 2001. I was intrigued by the results of Gayayev's experiments and the concept of the wave nature and field behavior of chromosomes, because such a possibility had been described in The Keys of Enoch by J.J. Hertog, a visionary text of spiritual scientific ideas that I have been teaching for the last 20 years. In this book, it is said that future, quote, bioengineers will have the ability to transmit a genetic code by laser engineering to members of another race. And that, quote, man will be able to understand this transfer principle by employing a light beam with a specific wavelengths on a chromosome. I was subsequently privileged to work with academician Vlail Petrovich Kaznachev and Dr. Alexander Trofimov, and it is their Institute of Cosmic Anthropoecology, Novosibirsk, that is also the origin of the career and research of Peter Gayayev. There, the electromagnetic communication of living cells, originally discovered by Alexander Gurevich and later expanded by Fritz Popp and others, was first documented in experiments. For anybody who is yet unfamiliar with the work of Peter Gayayev, I have produced an extensive video presentation about the wave genome for the Solari report, and I humbly suggest to review it in order to begin to appreciate the revolutionary nature of this research and what it means to literally each one of us. In 2012, we invited Dr. Gayayev to the Academy for Future Science European Conference in Austria, where he gave a 2-hour presentation to almost 600 participants present. And I last saw Peter Gayayev in 2019 at last year's TCCHE conference in London, where we both spoke on the multidimensional aspects of the genome.
A genome is an organism's complete set of genetic instructions. Each genome contains all of the information needed to build that organism and to allow it to grow and develop.
Peter Gayayev's work and legacy is groundbreaking. Not only did he show that the living organism's genetic information is unified in what he calls a chromosome continuum, a kind of stable wave train that travels throughout the organism along the highly ordered geometric structure of the DNA molecule.
So the wave genome is a stabilized pattern of waves that travel along the path of the DNA structure.
This grid or quasi-crystalline gel state stores the genetic information in form of electromagnetic and acoustic holograms.
So the wave genome is a liquid crystal gel, sort of like a plasma, which stores genetic information in holograms comprised of electromagnetism and sound,
which he recognized as the true source of the blueprints of life and biological function.
By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the hosts of them by the breath of his mouth.
The spectrum of this electromagnetic holographic code can be captured through laser interferometry using a broadband laser that is focused onto the DNA, which is equally laser-like in its highly coherent photon emissions. In this way, an electromagnetic interference pattern is created that can be stored and transmitted.
So the genetic code stored in the wave genome can be captured through laser interferometry, which is basically a broadband laser beam focused onto the DNA. The DNA can then capture, store, and transmit the new holographic code that was stored in the original wave genome.
This means genetic information can be transmitted or teleported through light, even over a distance.
These holographic codes would be the same genetic information that is being transmitted via Reiki energy during a distance healing. Reiki energy is light.
The positive as well as negative implications are not difficult to grasp. Pathogenic organisms could theoretically be radiated over any field of crops from an airplane.
So basically, pathogens that cause sickness and disease could also be transmitted using this light, by a plane flying over a crop of food, vegetables, or fruit and emitting the pathogens through the light in the same way that the wave genome can be used to alter the DNA in a positive way.
And in fact, this has been done. It makes one think about the current viral pathogens going around the world.
In other words, the wave genome in the wrong hands could be used in the wrong way to spread pathogens that go viral and cause pandemics.
Gayayev was completely aware of the potential misuse of his discoveries and had always vehemently objected to any such practices. His own experiments, in contrast, were looking to obtain the holographic information of healthy cells and organs. And when those are radiated onto diseased cells, astonishing healing and longevity can be created.
So he intended to use the wave genome to transmit the holographic code of healthy cells into the DNA of the unhealthy cells, resulting in a quantum healing of the unhealthy cells on a cellular level.
Famous is his experiment with rats that received a pancreatic poisoning. The genetic information of healthy pancreas cells were retransmitted by laser, and the animals were programmed back to health. Remarkably, Gayayev narrates that after this breakthrough had been made, he returned to the laboratory one morning and found all equipment, research results, and documentation removed. The lab was empty.
So once he discovered how to reprogram the DNA back to health at a cellular level, he was targeted by the powers that used to be, and he was essentially robbed of all of his equipment.
Gayayev also demonstrated that there is a direct correlation between the genetic code and the structure of language.
So he also discovered a direct correlation between the structure of human language and the human genome, essentially proving that human DNA can be programmed and reprogrammed using the power of the spoken word. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the hosts of them by the breath of his mouth. So it was the power of the word of God spoken aloud that originally called everything into being,
which led to his formulation of linguistic wave genetics. Literally, the resonance between human language and the genome.
So, in the same way that a laser beam can be used to transmit the wave genome to alter the DNA, linguistic wave genetics, meaning the spoken word, can also be used to program and reprogram DNA structures in the same way, resulting in healing on a cellular level.
Or put simply, DNA can be coded by language or words. For Gayayev, the current and outdated paradigm of molecular genetics, including CRISPR techniques and gene modification, would always lead to severe consequences and possibly irreparable damage.
So, Dr. Gayayev considered genetically modified organisms or genetic modification to be outdated and also dangerous,
because the model is incomplete and erroneous, as it ignores the quantum optical and wave linguistic principles of DNA. Dr. Peter Gayayev's discoveries and those of academicians Kasnachev and Trofimov, Gennady Shipov, Hartmut Müller, Fritz Popp, Luc Montagnier, Jacques Benveniste, Carlo Ventura, and many others are a complete paradigm shift that will one day give rise to a totally new understanding of both the biosphere as well as the noosphere. With what is going on right now in so-called biosafety laboratories and with the pharmacological race to produce untested next-generation DNA vaccines, this great and independent researcher and pioneer of life sciences could not have died at a more critical and precarious moment in the history of medicine.
So basically, Dr. Gayayev had made discoveries that were about to change the world, and it just so happened that he just suddenly died. We all know how the story goes, and so it makes you wonder how he died.
Gayayev's last article was dedicated to this question of the appropriate response to fighting COVID-19. He was convinced that the quantum biological approach would offer much more effective cures and safe immunization without side effects.
Having the ability to correct the DNA on a cellular level would have resulted in quantum healing.
Based on a holistic communication of all levels in the biome. Had Gayayev's work been recognized and studied by universities worldwide, the medical community today, I believe, would be in a different position in handling a challenging virus. Certain of his academic colleagues and people who knew him are concerned that his passing at this time, despite his age of 79, is unusual, as he was known to be of excellent condition.
The first thing that any healer does when they discover a modality or a method of healing is that they heal themselves. And Dr. Gayayev was able to heal on a cellular level, so there was no reason why his health should have been declining.
He died of a brain edema, when in fact his official recognition may have been just around the corner, as only weeks earlier he received a letter of the Nobel Prize Committee to inform him about his nomination as a candidate for the Nobel Prize of Medicine in 2021. Imagine the dramatic impulse this could mean for the future of medicine and our evaluation of life. I pray it will still happen, even if only posthumously.
So though Dr. Gayayev may have been taken out of the game before his time, there are those who will pick up and carry the torch to make sure that the world receives this knowledge.
Dr. Peter Gayayev's life, work, and untimely death must not be in vain. I urge you all to educate yourselves and all those in your sphere of influence to know more about this groundbreaking research and the paradigm-shifting implications of a higher, intelligent origin of life. Dr. Gayayev himself would often open his lectures with the words from John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word became flesh. As he understood directly that there is life in every word coming from divine consciousness. So I pray that he may now experience this word become light, light, light.
So far, there hasn't been a scientific invention that could be used solely to benefit mankind. Any of them can be used in two very different ways. There is sufficient reason to believe that if we understand the laws of wave genetics, we'll be able to do so many things. Our work is based not only on theoretical findings, but on experimental data too. We now know for sure that it's possible to transfer genetic and metabolic information across any distance in a fraction of a second, instantly, the way our cells communicate with each other. After a series of groundbreaking experiments and publications, Professors Gureyev and Tershiny were invited to Canada, where they were provided with first-rate equipment and challenged with a clear-cut, short-term task to prove that genetic information could exist in a type of electromagnetic field and could be communicated from one body to another.
Like this.
Moreover, the receiving body was supposed to transform its own metabolism in a way that would be set by the researchers. The scientists got to work at once. We used our laser and radio wave equipment. We transcribed the information contained on a healthy pancreas and transferred it to the animals with affected pancreases. In 10 days, all of them fully recovered. This means that their pancreases had regenerated. That is the only conceivable interpretation of this experiment. These tests have shown that it's possible to induce a complete functional recovery of any affected organ by means of transference of genetic information from a healthy organ of another body.
This is why a healer must first heal thyself, because you have to possess the genetic codes for health within your own body before you can transmit them to another person's body.
In other words, they've discovered a new surgery-free anti-aging tool. Wave genetics allows us to challenge the theory of the origin of life on our planet. Perhaps we're about to witness some tremendous scientific breakthroughs that would change our lives. By controlling the genomes of viruses and bacteria, we'd be able to overcome any diseases, even cancer, diabetes, TB, and HIV. It would be possible to regenerate organs without the surgeon's knife. You'd be able to live longer. The advocates of wave genetics believe that incredible prospects await humanity. We've been talking to plants, and we weren't the first. There was an outstanding American plant breeder, Luther Burbank. He was already very famous and had achieved great things in the development of new plant varieties when he started to study an edible and very tasty cactus. However, this plant has extremely long and sharp spines, and it was very difficult to remove them. Burbank used all the techniques of genetic selection for a few years, but nothing worked. When all the traditional methods were exhausted and he didn't know what else to do, he began simply talking to the cactus. I don't know what words he used, there are no records about it, but he simply asked the cactus to hide its spines. It seems ridiculous, but you have to agree, speech can have an impact. After all, human and plant genes have a lot in common. Moreover, all of us, plants and animals, share a common origin. Human DNA and that of the cactus have the same components and structure. What information is recorded in DNA and how it can be affected is another matter. Indeed, Burbank has influenced the cactus in a very unusual way, as speech seems to be also some kind of genetic material. And would you believe, after a few generations, the cactus was persuaded to put away its spines?
So not only do spoken words affect the human body, it affects everything in creation.
This genetic trait, the existence or the absence of spines, is inherited. And recently this spineless cactus has been cultivated and used as a food, and nobody remembers that it was developed by Luther Burbank, using conversation, persuasion, and coaxing.
Dr.
Emoto put some rice into 3 glass jars and poured water over it. Every day for a month he said, "Thank you" to the first jar, and "You're an idiot" to the second. The third jar received no attention.
Those who are not familiar with Dr. Masaru Emoto and his work, definitely check him out, do some research. He has some amazing studies regarding the molecular structure of water. Okay?
In a month, the rice that was told thank you started to ferment, emitting a strong and pleasant aroma. The second portion of rice turned black, and the rice in the third jar began to rot. This phenomenon is well known in everyday life. There are good housewives who love to garden and have a lot of plants in their home and in the garden. Everything in their care grows well, blossoms and bears fruit. There are also other housewives whose plants grow badly, dry up and die, no matter what they do. Now, the ladies whose plants grow well, they're kind-hearted, they talk to their plants. They even deliver long speeches, a lot of kind and pleasant words, and everything grows perfectly. I once collaborated with a group of women who worked with plants and mentally determined the shape of the plant's leaves. I have excellent photos showing this amazing fact, a way of changing the genetic structure. The shapes of oak leaves and some other trees were altered.
So we also have the power to affect the way that things grow and even the way that they look.
I've shown these pictures to people, but no one believes it. We carried out another experiment, more scientifically rigorous. First of all, we created a sophisticated electromagnetic generator that works similarly to our chromosomes. It produces an effect which I'm not going to go into now. We use the generator to introduce the information from human speech into plants. For this experiment, we took samples of wheat and barley that were irradiated with an X-ray at a dose of 2000 Röntgen. This treatment breaks the chromosome and the plants die after a generation because of destroyed genetic features. We began to talk to these irradiated and dying plants via the generator. It was directing the human speech into plants by modulating the electromagnetic irradiation, which reproduces the processes taking place in chromosomes. We introduced the verbal information, just as Luther Burbank did, and said the following to the plants. Hey, regenerate yourself. We'll help you to fix your chromosomes. Please recover and repair yourself. This is what we said to them, the same text in 3 languages, Russian, English, and German. Plants of the control variant were given nonsense information. The results of this work were published. There is a substantial article in the Russian Journal of Physical Thought, and in my first scientific monograph called Wave Genome in 1994. Everything was described there in great detail. Well, when we introduced these words to the dying plants, their chromosomes actually began to recover, regardless of what language was used. We worked with tens of thousands of plants, and statistic treatment of experimental data demonstrated absolute reliability of the results we obtained. Human speech appears to be a genetic material, but how does one explain the fact that the use of different languages had the same outcome?
It doesn't matter what language you use because it is not so much the words as it is the intent and the energy behind the words that create the effect.
There's some kind of pre-conscious, subconscious, non-verbalizing communication that's transmitted by a human. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to realize one more experiment. To use thought instead of speech. Whoever's thinking, a Russian, Englishman, or a German, is absolutely not important. The thought is the same. The verbalization might be different in Russian, English, or German, but the essence is the same. The form of the signal transmission does not affect its content. In other words, the communication may be written in any language, even in Morse code. It may even be spoken. In all cases, the address would be the same and your message would be directed to the same recipient. Whoever's carrying the information does not influence the content of that information. It's already a well-understood principle. So, this experiment was carried out. It demonstrates direct evidence of the genetic potential of human speech, and how, for example, you talk to a dog. It's possible to speak with a dog in any language, and it will understand, even though it doesn't know any human language.
Информация, идущая от мозга, вот она вот находится в такой
Because it's something
суперпозиции.
subconscious.
Ведь физики меня поймут. Вот, состояние, да, когда нет и то, и другое одновременно. Вот такое вот единение
Information radiates from the
признаков
brain. Even
смешения
before a person has
происходит
formulated what he
в мозгу,
wants to
когда он
say
еще не
in the form of
сформулировал
speech.
в форме речи то, что он хочет сказать. Понимаете?
The film you're about to see has no characters. If you spare a little of your imagination, it is a film to describe to you the effect of cymatic frequencies on matter.
Cymatics is the study of the visual representation of sound waves. For this portion of the video, I will be embedding subliminal messages within your mind. So if you do not wish to be unraveled, click off now. Now is the first day of the best days of your life.
Everything owes its existence solely and completely to sound.